गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवारधारे गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवारधारे यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारे यमुनातीरावनचारे जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, Texts 19 and 20. Atmanityo vyayashuddha ekakshetragya ashrayah avikriya swadrughetur vyapako sangyanavrtah. Atmanityo vyayashuddha ekakshetragya ashrayah avikriya swadrighetur vyapako sangyanavrtah. Atma nityo vyaya shuddha Ladies, please. Atma nityo vyaya shuddha eka kshetrajna ashraya avikriya sadrik hetu vyapako sangyanavrtah Atma nityo vyaya shuddha eka kshetrajna ashraya avikriya sadrik hetu vyapako sangyanavrtah eter dvadashabhirvidvan atmano lakshane pare aham mametya sadbhavam dehadau mohajam tyajet. Atma, the spirit soul, the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nityaha, without birth or death. Avyayaha, with no possibility of dwindling. Shuddhaha, without the material contamination of attachment and detachment. Ekaha, individual. Kshetrajnaha, who knows and is therefore different from the material body. Ashrayaha, the original foundation. Avikriyaha, not undergoing changes like the body. Swadrak, self-illuminated. Hetu, the cause of all causes. Vyapakaha, spreading throughout the body in the form of consciousness. Asangi, not depending on the body, free to transmigrate from one body to another. Anavrataha, not covered by material contamination. Etai, by all these. Dvadashabhihi, 12. Vidwan, a person who is not foolish, but fully aware of things as they are. Atmanaha, of the spirit soul. Lakshanaihi, symptoms. Paraihi, transcendental. Aham, I am this body. Mama, mine. Everything in relationship with this body is mine. Iti, thus. Asadbhavam, a false conception of life. Deha adav, identifying oneself with the material body, and then with one's wife, children, family, community, nation, and so on. Mohajam, produced from illusory knowledge. Tyajet, must give up. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from deterioration and free from material contamination. They are individual, they are the knowers of the external body, and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change, they are self-illuminated, they are the cause of all causes, and they are all-pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body, and therefore they are always uncovered. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life in which one thinks, I am this material body, and everything in relationship with this body is mine. In the translation, Prabhupada explains 3 words with footnotes. So the first word, it says Ashraya, the original foundation. So he gives the footnote, without the shelter of the spirit soul, the material body cannot exist, just as a house cannot stand without foundation. Then the other one is avikriyaha, not undergoing changes like the body. And the footnote says, as already explained, the fruits and flowers of a tree take birth, exist, grow, transform, dwindle, and die according to seasonal changes. But the tree, through all these changes, remains the same. Similarly, the Atma is free from all changes. And the third one is Swadruk, self-illuminated. Prabhupada writes, one does not need to make the soul prominent. It is automatically prominent. One can very easily understand that in the living body there is a spirit soul. Easily understand. Okay. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 7, Lord Krishna clearly says, Mamaivamsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. Jiva bhuta. All the living entities are part of me. Therefore, the living entities are qualitatively the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the leader, the supreme among all living entities. In the Vedas it is said, Nityo Nityanam Chetanash Chetananam. The Lord is the chief individual living entity, the leader of the subordinate living entities. Because the living entities are parts or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. The living entities have the same qualities as the Lord, just as a drop of sea water is composed of the same chemicals as the great sea itself. Thus, there is oneness in quality, but a difference in quantity. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by understanding the sample, the living entity, because all the qualities of God exist in a minute quantity in the living entities. There is oneness, but God is great, whereas the living entities are extremely small. Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan. Katha Upanishad 1-20. The living entities are smaller than the atom, but God is greater than the greatest. Our conception of greatness may be represented by the sky, because we think of the sky as being unlimitedly big, but God is bigger than the sky. Similarly, we have knowledge that the living entities are smaller than atoms, being 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. Yet, the quality of being the supreme cause of all causes exists in the living entity as well as in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indeed, it is due to the presence of the living entity that the body exists and the bodily changes take place. Similarly, it is because the Supreme Lord is within the universe that the changes dictated by the material laws occur. The word ekaha, meaning individual, is significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Matsthani sarva bhutani na chaham teshvavastitaha. Everything material and spiritual, including earth, water, air, fire, sky, and the living entities, exist on the platform of spirit soul. Although everything is an emanation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not think that the Supreme Lord is dependent on anything else. Both God and the living entities are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Yasmin Dyauh Prithvi Chantariksham Vijñātāram Adhikena Vijaniyat Ekam Evadvitiyam Atma Jyotis Smarad Iho Vachaha Sa Imam Lokan Asrujata Satyam Jnanam Anantam Asangohi Ayam Purushaha Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. All these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great and the other is small, but both of them are the cause of all causes, the corporally limited and the universally unlimited. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to Him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. Their intelligence is called avishuddha buddhayah, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the Supreme Cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto Him. Vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma sudurlabha. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great, Vibhu, whereas the living entity is small, Anu, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called aham mama, janasya mohoyam aham mameti. This is illusion. One must give up his illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. Om ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya chaksurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I am sorry, it is disappointing for all of us that Maharaj cannot give class. So that's one disappointment. And to settle with me is further disappointment. And I came to know like few minutes before that he's not giving class. Although the information was sent earlier. Acharyanishta sent it in the morning, but I was on the altar, so I had no idea. And Maharaj came down, so I assumed, he'll give class. Apparently not. So, in Sanskrit or in the Vedic knowledge, or in any language, there are some terms that we know or we use to give some person choices, right? So, for example, a phrase that we can use when we want to express that the other person has some choice, we say, if you would like to, or would you like to, or here are some options, which one would you like? Correct? And so the other person can choose. But if we are told, you will do it this way, or do this, choose this, what does that convey? You don't have a choice, primarily. It's a mandate. You must do. And if you don't do, then there is some consequence that may be unfavorable to you or us. I'm not speaking you, but so if we don't, then there is something unfavorable that will be a consequence. Similarly, in the Vedic literature, if you carefully see Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or any of the other literatures, Vedic literatures, there are sometimes these terms that appear, and please take note of it, that basically doesn't give us a choice. And that word appears in the last line of the second verse in this couplet So it's not on the board, and it says Tyajet. Tyajet means one must give up. Can you think of other places where such a direct mandate is provided by the particular scripture or Krishna? You heard the verse Tasmat Gurum Prapadyeta? Or that one must approach a spiritual master, right? Abhigachet. One must approach a spiritual master. There is no choice. Because if we don't make that choice, the consequence is very severe. That's the reason the mandate is there. Of course, we can always choose. The point is we can always choose, but there is a severe consequence for making the wrong choice. So here, Prahlad Maharaj is not giving an option. He's saying, Tyajet, one must give up. And what should one give up? He says, Aham Mama, this whole idea of I and mine, the phrase that we are used to is bodily conception. One must give up the bodily conception of life, because the bodily conception has these consequences. Asad bhavam. It makes us live in illusion. It makes us accept everything that doesn't exist as if it were existing. Or in other words, we start living an imaginary life. We start imagining what's going on around us. We start imagining what others are thinking about us. Then we start imagining what we should do in response to that imagination of what they are thinking about us. And we fall into a major loop that's not easy to get out of. So he says, Asad bhavam, dehadav moham. So the illusion, the consequence of living in illusion is another body. Not this good-looking body that we have right now. Another body would be in the body of any of the others 8,400,000 or 8 million species, maybe 400,000 as well. Maybe another human being, but maybe with not such good looks or such intelligence that we have, or the rich, or the wealth that we possess, or the great family that we may have come from. It can be worse, and it's quite likely it will be worse. These are the consequences of living the life of imagination, or we say illusion, because in illusion everything is imagined. If you enter a dark room, you only have to imagine or picture in your mind what's where, till you bump into something and like, oh, I did not know it's here. So living an imaginary life or life of illusion has very severe consequences. And one consequence that we may not appreciate right away, and that consequence is we get a body. Maybe to make it worse, we should consider that we also get a mind. Oh, body we can tolerate. Mind? Oh, Krishna, Krishna. The mind is the source of all our troubles. All our troubles. They begin and end because of the mind. They don't end actually. All the troubles begin and continue because of the mind. So the consequence of illusion is another mind that allows for even more varieties of imaginary lifestyle. And therefore Prahlad is saying, Tyajet, one must give up this bodily conception. So we must try every day, every moment, and every moment, or at least in major parts of the day or at the end of the day, we consider today, what all have I done? that has strengthened my idea that I am this body and mind? What have I done that has helped me loosen this grip of the bodily conception of life? The first list may be very long, and the second list may be very short or blank. But at least the consideration is worth it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives an instruction that at the end of the day, when one is ending the day, one should take about 10-15 minutes, or 2 minutes if you like, whatever, some time to go through and assess the day. Have I conducted myself as a servant of Krishna today? It does not mean, did I do services? It's different. Because we use the word service for everything, right? Can you please pick this from there and put it there? That's a service, Prabhu. Can you please lead the kirtan? That's a service. So yeah, on the external physical realm, we call them service. But the real service is what's happening inside, in our minds. Was I of a service attitude when I did what I did? Or was I somewhere else altogether? Or happy, unhappy, looking for adoration, looking for appreciation, looking for acknowledgement, looking for faults, whatever. Then we're not a servant. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur asks us to analyze, have I spent today in trying to be a servant of Krishna? And then the next part of the contemplation is, now tomorrow, when I wake up, or someone wakes me up, willingly or unwillingly, when I open my eyes, how can I improve from today tomorrow? It's a day-by-day incremental improvement. And we know certain areas that we are strong, or I should say, stronger relatively, and areas that we are weak. So those areas we are strong in, we strengthen further. And those areas we are weak in, we try to improve. This is our method of working on this instruction where Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Tyajet, one should give up. It's an attempt. And yesterday you were asking, what's the effort I'm supposed to do? That's the effort. And when Krishna sees, oh, my devotee, he's trying, let me help. Krishna becomes very eager to intervene and immediately help us. Because we've taken this instruction, Tyajet, seriously. And we're showing to Krishna, we're demonstrating to Krishna, your devotee gave me this instruction and I'm trying to follow it. So there's a phrase that our perfection is not in the sense of becoming perfect, but in endeavoring for perfection. Because on our own, we cannot become perfect. To untie a knot is very difficult. This morning, while I was on the altar, one of the garments of the deities, the previous pujari had put a double knot. We usually put a bow tie knot or a half bow tie knot, so that all you have to do is pull, and that particular jewelry or garment can easily be removed. So either the string was not long enough or something, they put 2 knots. And over the day, the knot becomes tighter because the cloth has weight, so it moves down. And so the knot becomes tighter and tighter. And I had to spend more than 6 minutes trying to untie that knot. And this morning I thought of clipping my nails. And I was just running late. I said, okay, not today, maybe some other day. And I was so glad I had nails that I could work on that knot. But you know what? How much ever I tried, that knot wouldn't give. Finally, I had to pray, oh Kishori, Srimati Radharani, can you help loosen this knot, please. If this knot is so difficult, what to speak of the knot in my heart? That I have tightened and tightened and tightened and added weight so tightly that even if I were to try, even before I try, I only have to give up and say, it's impossible. But Radharani, can you help? Please help. This is important. Can you help untie the knot? And then slowly and slowly and slowly it loosens. And not because I'm working at it, as because I'm praying, please help. But I'm working at it. So yesterday we heard when Yashoda Mai wanted to tie the knot, she tried and she was flabbergasted. Why is it how much of a rope I bring? It's always 2 fingers too short. She had brought rope from 900,000 cows and put it around Krishna's very thin waist. And still it was 2 inches too short. And everyone was laughing at Yashoda Devi because she was sweating while she's trying to put this knot. And how much of a rope she brings, it's not sufficient. And others were giggling, other gopis. Just this morning, you put a belt around Krishna's waist and there was no problem. What happened? I don't know. She's sweating. Krishna's mercy, the acharyas explained that these 2 fingers, or that 2 inches, are our effort and Krishna's grace. Krishna's grace doesn't descend without our making an effort to receive it. If someone were to give me this book and I stand like this, take the book. Take the book. Yeah, thank you. No, take it. Yeah, took it. Then I can't, the effort that I have to make is to receive it. That's my effort. Everything else is that mercy that someone is giving. So Prahlad Maharaj is warning us that this knot, or the life of illusion and imagination, the mind, let's just analyze the mind a little bit. Here's what the mind does. And I'm sure each of us has that experience. Maybe you don't have. You're a special crowd in general. The mind works like a magnifying glass. Anyone used binoculars? All right. You put on the binoculars and something that is far appears big and close. The mind is like that. Anything small, really not so significant, it magnifies and puts it right in front of your face, so big. And if you turn the binoculars this way, anything that is close looks very far. So all the devotees who are close to us, we look towards them from the other side of the binoculars. And they look like, whoa, where are they? So the mind flips because it works on duality. Far and near are dualities, right? So the mind very quickly brings very close and magnifies all our problems and imagination. How much you're dealing with, Prabhu. You're really amazing. And the other side is, all these devotees are so far away, you're all alone. Far, near. This duality is the mind's very special trick. It also magnifies very tiny problems into these massive things, and we feel like, oh, I have to deal with this. All the spiritual master does is change the binoculars or magnifying glass in such a way that something so big actually gets smaller in its real size. Most of the things that the mind deals with, imagination is one of the things, is fear. Have you seen people? Some women I know. There will be a small bug this size. And that person can be about 160 pounds big. But they are scared of that tiny bug. All you have to do is what they call it right sizing the fear. Because the bug can be dangerous, no doubt. Tiny bed bug can do something to a big guy, right? So right sizing the fear is necessary, but over expanding or exaggerating the fear, that's the department of the mind. It thinks every day, let's see, what can we over exaggerate today? It doesn't have to look too far. Everything gets this big. That's called it making a mountain of a molehill, as they say. Huh? Molehill. This is a small mole that gets into the ground. It magnifies, exaggerates the whole thing. And in that illusion, we are living and trying to move things and adjust things and this and that. And Prahlad Maharaj says, Mohayam, it bewilders, it enamors the person. You've seen the deer? Anyone had that experience? You're driving and a deer crosses the highway? You have? They say as soon as the deer sees the headlights, what does the deer do? Run away? It stops. For some weird reason, doesn't run, stops and stares. And the next thing is gets hit. So this mohayam, that's in the second verse, is the illusion is such that a person just stands bewildered before being hit by these karmic laws. Very badly hit. So Prahlad very lovingly is saying, Tyajet, work sincerely to get rid of it. No, what do I have to hold on to work out of this? So this verse identifies 12 characteristics of the soul. Because the next line says, Eter dvadashabhir. These 12, he says. So there are 12 characteristics here. So the first thing is we say all of this falls in the category of true knowledge or knowledge. So one will ask, how do you define knowledge? What would you say? To distinguish matter from spirit. Any other generic definition? Knowledge. I have knowledge about something when I know that something in its true nature. And if I know it as it is, I have true knowledge about anything. If the common example we give is that of a pen. I have knowledge that this is a pen when I use it as a writing instrument. If I use it as a ballistic and throw it at someone, or if I use it as a paperweight, or if I use it for something else, then although I'm using it, I'm not using it in its true nature. So I'm not using it with knowledge. I'm using it in ignorance. And knowledge has two features. It defines what something is, and it defines what something is not. And in these two verses, that's what Prahlad is doing. The first verse has all the 12 characteristics of who one is, and the next verse is of who one is not. And if we are only living according to who we are not, then it's usually called craziness, madness. There was a joke, read it recently. There was a man, let's say Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was every day conducting himself as if he was King George V. He would walk into his house and have this royal gait, nicely walk in. He would sit on his couch, sit like a king. And if he wanted something, water, he would call for water or a drink. So his entire family was really upset with him. Because he's not King George V, he's Mr. Smith. So finally, after dealing with him a lot, they said, we'll call the doctors. So the doctor came in and said, so, sir, what's the problem? Please tell me. He said, I have no problem. Really? Yeah, I have no problem at all. The problem is with my wife. So the doctor said, how so? He said, I've tried to explain to her so many times, but she still thinks she's Mrs. Smith. She still thinks she's Mrs. Smith. He's thinking he's King George. But he thinks, oh, she's thinking as Mrs. Smith. The problem is with her. This guy is living a whole imagined identity. But the problem is with someone else. So the 12 characteristics given here, and Prabhupada explains them. So let's go through. First, it says Nityaha. And in the verse it's in plural. And so Prabhupada explains that both super soul and the tiny infinitesimal soul are both called Atma and both have the same characteristics, by which we conclude that the living entity and God are qualitatively one. So now this is important because we meet people. Either they come to the temple or we are out on the street, we meet somewhere, our friends, relatives, and they ask us, what are you learning? You're a Hare Krishna. What is your teaching? So this is the foundational teaching. The establishment of the idea that we are not this body, but conscious living entities with these characteristics. Why do we explain something by its characteristics? Suppose we don't know something, and we have to explain to someone, can you bring such and such from that floor, second floor? What is it you're looking for? I'm looking for, let's say, my pen. Oh, I have never seen your pen. Can you describe your pen? I don't say, it's a pen, bring it. I describe it in terms of its characteristics. It's a ballpoint pen. It has, a silver body. And it doesn't work with the button, but it has to be twisted. It has this brand, Schaefer, Parker, Montblanc, whatever. It has a brand. It says this color. It is this thickness, right? These are called characteristics. By characteristics, you better understand something. Hence, if Prahlad Maharaj said we are just soul, without giving any characteristics, then we wouldn't understand. So here are the 12 characteristics. First, Nityaha. Nitya means without birth or death. As soon as we hear this, the first thing it tells us is that we are different from the body, no? Because do we know anyone? In our experience, have we met anyone who will not die? What if I say, there is one such person on this planet who will never die? How will you refute it? The planet gets annihilated, okay? Huh? You'll have to ask everyone, okay? I myself might not be alive to see him eternally alive. And this is the thing, that as soon as we hear word Nitya, it distinguishes that the body is temporary. Because we all say birthday, we all say such and such person died. So that's the first characteristic of distinction. Second, Avyayaha, with no possibility of dwindling. Anyone experienced dwindling here? Not yet? Anyone's hair falling off? Anyone's body becoming weaker? Not you yet, not yet. Time's coming up. Anyone's body dwindling? Tired? Earlier we're not young, and maybe you guys are very young, so maybe it doesn't apply to you. So it applies to me. Dwindling. Things start, the same vigor that we had doesn't remain. Okay, we don't see dwindling. Have you seen anyone whose body is dwindling? Sure. Old age is all around us. There's a very beautiful statement in Ramayana that once King Dasharath was standing in front of a mirror and he saw that his sideburns were graying. Because apparently when the hair has to gray, and it grays the proper way, the sideburns become gray first. And my hair became gray all over because of bad habits. But it's supposed to gray the sideburns first. And it's said that it's like that sideburn hair or graying is a whisper in the ear. You're becoming old now. That's why it's closest to the ear. So Dasharath saw that and said, oh, time to give up my kingdom and let Lord Ram come. So old age is the way the body dwindles. But the soul doesn't. Okay. Third, Shuddha, without the material contamination of attachment and detachment. Now this is a little difficult because the soul by nature has attachment for Krishna and detachment from matter. And the body, because it is reflection of reality, it has detachment from Krishna and attachment to matter. It's exactly the opposite. In a mirror, you see the image, what is straight up seems upside down, isn't it? So the soul has attachment for Krishna and detachment from matter, and the body or the bodily conception has the opposite. Next one. He says, Ekaha, individual. That's a characteristic. This is given so that we don't falsely assume that the famous, we are all one. Everything is one, Swamiji. You know the famous discussions Prabhupada had in MIT. There was a young Indian student who came to Prabhupada and said, isn't it true that in the end it's all one? Prabhupada caught hold of his shirt by his collar and said, if everything is one, why are you wearing a shirt and not a cotton ball? And elsewhere he said, if everything is one, why are you putting your food here and not here? He was so heavy. So this ekaha is to distinguish to establish the individuality of every living being. Without individuality, you cannot have the concept of love. We talk of love for Godhead. Without individuality, there is no concept of love. I'll let you stay with it and think about it. Next is a kshetrajya. Kshetrajya means who knows and is therefore different from the material body. If we are the material body, we wouldn't know. Like we say, my stomach hurts. My head hurts. So we are distinct from it because my stomach or my head indicates that I am different from the stomach and head. Therefore I call it kshetrajya. I'm aware of what's going on. I don't say, if you go to a doctor and say, what's wrong? I'm hurting. All right, but where's the problem? Oh, I'm just hurting. Next, ashraya, the original foundation. And Prabhupada identifies that without the spirit soul, material body cannot exist. The stable is inert. If we kick it or push it or yell at it, it will not respond. If it responds, go to a doctor. It doesn't respond, it's inert. But when there's a spirit soul, you say something to someone, they will respond. because conscious being. And without the soul, there's no body. Just this morning, Prabhupada is saying, when the soul is there, we embrace the body. I love you. As soon as the soul leaves, we say, get this body out of the house now. Burn it, bury it, whatever. Get rid of it. We don't say, I love you, don't go. Therefore I say, if someone does, go to a doctor, because that's a little, what's it called? What's that disease called, where they like to be with dead bodies? Necrophilia? See, my mind has all these words in it. Okay. Avikriyaha, not undergoing changes like the body. So yesterday we heard the 6 changes that happen, and the soul doesn't go through those 6 changes. And then he says, Swadrik, self-illuminating. What does it mean? It's always on? The light's on? It says Swadrik, self-illuminated. Okay, any other attempts? That's nice way. Anything else? Swadrik, self-illuminated. You walk into a dark room and the room is lit up. The illumination is not by light necessarily, although there are past times that when the Lord was appearing, it was like 1,000 suns had risen simultaneously. When Lord Vamana was walking to meet Bali Maharaj, they had to squint their eyes because Lord Vamana's illumination was so strong. So in one sense, yes, it's the light. In another sense, the light is from knowledge. I knew it, yeah. Because illusion is compared to darkness and knowledge is compared to light. So self-illuminated means it does not need knowledge from some external source. It is already full of knowledge, but covered in the conditioned state. Therefore, realization is said is given in the heart. It's not a skill. Krishna consciousness is not a skill that is outside in. Can you think of some skills that are outside in? Riding a bicycle. You practice and it becomes a skill. Typing. We were taught, I don't know you guys, but I went through school where to put it in a typewriter and a whole page of ASDF, ASDF, ASDF space, ASDF space. Another sheet of paper, semicolon LKJ, semicolon LKJ, the whole page. And then the next page, ASDF space, semicolon LKJ space. And it's a skill that you learn. But love for Krishna or attraction for Krishna is not a skill to learn. It's there. That's the difference. We get confused sometimes. We think Krishna consciousness is a skill that we have to learn. No. Okay? Swadrik. Next is Hetu, the cause of all causes. We like this one. We like to be the cause of all causes. We are the cause of all the problems. Yes, in that sense it's true. We're cause of all causes. Then what it means is, as the soul, because of its presence, all the functions of the body are caused because of the presence of the soul. Once the soul leaves, the body stops functioning. And similarly for Vishnu, because he's there in the universe as Garbhadakshay Vishnu, this universe is moving. The sun is rising, the moon is rising, the stars are moving, the seasons are coming and going, the plants and vegetation are growing, the seas are all contained, etc. And he says, Vyapakaha, spreading throughout the body in the form of consciousness. There is every part of the body is pervaded by that consciousness. He uses different words. Do you know what word Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2? for consciousness spread all over the body? Second chapter. Sarvagata. Sarvagata means existing everywhere. Sarvagata sthanur. He uses oxymorons. Sarvagata is all over. Sthanur is situated. And so Prabhupada describes all over the body, consciousness is spread. So if you poke with a pin at the tip of the finger, the tip of the toe, pluck one hair, you're aware. We're unaware of many other things, but some things we're aware. That's a joke, by the way. Okay, hetu, vyapakaha. And he says, asangi, not dependent on the body. That means it moves from one body to another. What does Krishna give as an analogy of transmigrating from one body to another, just as changing of clothes, changing of garments? We don't say, I like my t-shirts so much that I will not put it for wash, I will continue wearing it. You do it only when you're a college student. Or jeans, that's I think that, in fact, if you wash jeans, you're crazy, something like that, right? But we give up one set of clothes and we put on another set of clothes. We may be attached to some clothes, but it's not like we don't put them for wash, we don't give them up. So asangi means the soul moves from one body to another. It's free to transmigrate. And he says, anavrita, not covered by material contamination. In its pure form, it has nothing to do with matter. In its conditioned state, it slaps on all these material designations. And then the final one, this is 12. Any comments, questions? Mikey? Is there a microphone?
I was thinking this earlier, like if someone's in the bodily concept of life, are they able to be selfless in any fashion? Like say they're being
when someone's in a bodily conception of life, can they be selfless in any way?
Yeah, can they have that attitude of being selfless to like, some philanthropic works or etc.? And what is the line that draws that's actually not, complete selflessness?
There are two perspectives to see it. In the ultimate issue, there is nobody who's selfless. When you take certain contexts of time or contexts of place, one may be selfless in that context. And the reason I say this, there are two references. In the first case, that means in the ultimate issue, in the conditioned world, nobody is selfless, is the verse, yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvair gunair tatra samasate suraha harav bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena api dhavato bahi asati dhavato bahi. And the verse says that one who's a devotee, he is the embodiment of all the great qualities of the demigods. But one who's not a devotee, how can there be any good quality in them? They're just simply riding on the chariot of the mind. Which means, I can be very selfless now, but if you push me, you press my button, I'll kill you. Or I'll not be selfless anymore. Yeah, it's just the buttons on the other side. But a devotee though, for a devotee you push any button, apparently their qualities remain. So we see Prahlad Maharaj is being pushed, but he's not getting rid of or showing some other quality. So each of us has that time and space limit. And as we say, you're pushing me to the limit. So in that sense. Now in a contextual basis, being selfless is a manifestation of goodness. And Krishna explains that in this material world, the mode of goodness is always being competed. Right? There's competition by mode of passion and ignorance. So you always will see something mixed. So one may be selfless, some change, Passion may come in, ignorance may come in. I may be very selfless for a very foolish cause. That's ignorance. It's mixed. Yeah? Any other questions or comments? After him.
I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit more about this illusion when you feel like you're doing so much that nobody else is doing anything. You feel like you're like so important, but you're not getting any help. It's like so prevalent in my mind. Sometimes like it just like takes over, and I'll just like feel like so angry towards other devotees and things like that. And I was wondering if you could explain like how to get over this while it's happening, like quickly snap out of it, like, possibly explain it further.
Well, if you put a mustard seed under a microscope, it looks very big, or a magnifying glass. Wow, look at that. I got the biggest mustard seed. No one else has it. So one is context. Context in reality is, if I say to someone, I have the most sand in my heart, in my hands, more than you, someone will say, what's the value anyway? Prabhupada gave the example that all the different qualifications we have, all the different credits we have, the titles we have, they're all big zeros. And if I argue with you, you have 6 zeros, I have 10. He only has 1. There's no point arguing, they're all zeros. It doesn't matter how many you collect, unless you put a 1 in front of it and suddenly the zeros have value. Now, this idea that I am doing something so much, or I'm doing so much, others are not seeing it, or they're not doing as much, is our mind's way of taking Krishna out of the center and putting us right into the center. Narada Muni in the Bhagavatam gives an example. If you're in a whirlpool, like a big whirlpool, right? It all moves around what's called a vortex. But if the person is in the whirlpool and he looks at the whirlpool, you know how it looks like? It looks like the whirlpool is moving around him. He is at the center, or he's at the vortex, and everything is moving around him. Wow. That's the illusion. In fact, if we know, one way to help ourselves, Prabhupada said you should train your mind. And one way to train our minds is we ask the question, if I were to die this very moment, will the world notice? Will it make any difference to the world in its functioning? Absolutely not. Will it make any difference to the unit that I'm part of? For a few days, maybe. And after that, things move on. So there's the saying that the graveyard is full of indispensable people. Anyone who thinks I'm indispensable is sitting in the graveyard. Everybody has absolutely no value standing in this world unless Krishna gives some value. And that value comes when Krishna is in the center. Otherwise it has no value. It's just imagination. So there's a beautiful pastime. When once on a morning walk, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada. The conversation was about humility. And one of the aspects of humility is to consider ourselves tiny in relation to Krishna. So, or when we suppose we are doing a lot, we feel sometimes, I'm doing so much. We ask ourselves, when I compare myself to Srila Prabhupada, then it right sizes everything, you know. Okay, Prabhupada. then what to speak of all the abilities Krishna has and what he can do? He doesn't, all he has to think, let the universes manifest, and all the universes manifest in perfect order. Everything happens. So this pastime is, this conversation in the morning walk was about humility and being tiny, and Maharaj had expressed, Prabhupada, I find it difficult to be humble. It's a beautiful statement, honest statement. So Prabhupada took it from there and said, can you imagine the size of Mahavishnu's body? That when he lies down and he exhales, from every pore of his body, one universe manifests. From the pore of his body, one entire universe, it not manifests, the whole size of the universe is sitting there, in the pore of his skin. And there are innumerable universes, as many as of mustard seeds in a sack of mustard seeds. In that sack, one mustard seed is our universe. So it immediately gives context. Now in that one mustard seed-like universe, there are innumerable planets and stars. Of that one very tiny, insignificant is our planet Earth. Now, in that tiny, significant planet Earth, on it are many, many countries, of which United States of America is one country. In the United States, there are many, many, many cities, of which Los Angeles is one city. And in Los Angeles, there are many streets, of which Watsika Avenue is one street. On that street, there are many buildings, and in that there's one building called the Hare Krishna Temple. And in that one Hare Krishna temple, there are many devotees, and there is you. And you're finding it difficult to find yourself tiny? Was the sledgehammer statement from Prabhupada. What's the context? Like, how tiny are we, really? But what does the mind do? That's how we started. The mind, you are the most important person. Others don't recognize it. Show it to them. Prove it. You know, prove it to yourself. That's how the mind speaks to us. And we sit in class, the class that the mind gives us, and we say, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Others don't know. They're in ignorance. They're in illusion. Let me burst that bubble of illusion for them. Or whatever, however my mind speaks in a particular way. But that's, what is the context? Like, who are we? Very, very, very insignificant. And this is how we preach to our mind back. The prayer is that, oh my dear mind, you have talked to me for many lifetimes, and I have heard you like a very faithful servant. Now, you shut up, and I want to pay attention to Krishna. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear you anymore. For lifetimes, you've been speaking, and I've been hearing as a very faithful servant. Yes, yes. Whatever you say. Dasosmi, I am your servant. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, in the morning, you take a pair of shoes and you beat your mind with those shoes. And in the evening, you take a broom and you beat the mind with the broom. Meaning, discipline the mind. Don't listen to it, is the instruction we get. I hope. At least thank you for helping me remember tininess. You raised your hand. You want to add to this, or is it a separate thing? Add to it because there's someone waiting to ask another question. You too was feeling the same way? Wow. Oh, we all feel like that. You turn it on, please.
Thank you for the class. Can you explain like the positive side to that even though we're so infinitesimal and insignificant, the jiva could, by developing pure love for Krishna, we could conquer or captivate Krishna, who is the source of Mahavishnu.
Yeah. So our goal is not to capture Krishna, but it is said, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Pravartana. Without Krishna's mercy, one is unable to do anything. So our whole practice in our devotional service is to receive this descending mercy from Krishna and overcome our minds by consciously developing our relationship with Krishna and Krishna's devotees, more importantly. To say my relationship with Krishna and not pay attention to the devotees, one cannot overcome the mind. So it is said that two things are necessary for the soul to fully manifest its glory. One is chanting of the holy name, of course, and the other is called Vaishnava Seva. And these two are the pillars on which our devotional life stands. Service to the devotees, chanting of the holy name. And so the jiva has the capacity already there, as we heard, Svadrik, self-illuminated, to know fully about Krishna and his relationship with Krishna. Talking to the mind has made us forget that. And so we have to be talked to by scripture, sadhu and guru to realize our full potential. I'll end with this. In Ramayana, Hanuman, whose particular service is like the most significant service, he has to search for Sita Devi. And when they're at the bank of the shore of the ocean, and they're trying to consider who's going to fly 800 miles and come back. Different people say, oh, I don't have the strength to go. Someone said, I can go there, but I don't know how to come back. And Hanuman's not talking in all of this conversation because he has a curse. And the curse is that he will forget all his strengths. And he will only remember them when someone talks to him or reminds him of it. So then he has a particular curse. Let's talk to him. So they sit him down and tell him, oh, Hanuman, you can do this. You have the strength. You can fly across and you can come back. Remember, you could do this, you could do that. And suddenly all his memory, oh yes, by Lord Ramachandra's mercy, I'll be able to do that. And so he chants Lord Rama's name. There's a whole description that he went up on top of the Mahendra hill. And he grew in size to such a big body. He bent or knelt on the peak and with Lord Ram's name just pushed himself up. And the thrust or the impact by which he went up was so strong that the entire hill or mountain crushed into fine sand under his feet. So the soul has the capacity to overcome all the hurdles of the material energy when Krishna pulls him. But we forget very easily. That's your point, so thank you for bringing that up. Okay, anything else, or I'll let you have breakfast, the bright spot in the day. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.